Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Bev on this hot, toasty Wednesday morning. So I'm Bev Curtis here at House of Brokers with Bev and Company, and I have the pleasure this morning to have a special guest from Shelter Insurance, Mike Messer, and I'm going to have Mike introduce yourself to us this morning, please.
Thank you, Bev. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Messer. I'm an agent for Shelter Insurance. I've been with Shelter since 1999, and I started as an agent in 2006. Shelter Insurance is a local company that started right here in Columbia, Missouri in 1946. It's grown to be a very big company through 18 states, and they own several other companies and operate other insurance companies. Proud to work for them and happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate your time, and I know Alan and I have worked with Mike for a number of years on all of our homeowners insurance policies and various things, and he does an outstanding job and is a wealth of information, and I thought he would be a very appropriate person to have to give you some information, because as you're aware, basically our forum here is to provide valuable information to our customers and friends, and we always like to provide topics that we think is going to be very beneficial and helpful. So with that being said, let's kind of talk about the insurance, because I think there's some things about it that maybe people think are a little bit tricky, maybe they don't quite understand, and there's all sorts of different policies, and just kind of wading through that protection process so that you have the proper peace of mind. So with that being said, when it comes to homes then, Mike, I know that you guys insure a lot of properties and lenders definitely require it. What's the real benefit of a homeowner's insurance policy for folks to understand?
Well, the homeowner's policy is designed to protect an individual or a family's from financial loss. And a homeowner's policy is going to be different for each individual and each property. So it's really important that a lengthy discussion is had between an agent and a customer on what's different in that person's life and what's different in that particular property. So, and you mentioned a mortgage company. The mortgage company is going to want to protect their interests. So it's generally a requirement to have the homeowner's insurance, but just going and buying one without a lot of thought can be dangerous because there can be gaps in coverage. The insurance policy is generally a package policy, and it comes with more than just coverage for the dwelling. That is very important because that is probably the biggest investment in a person's life is their home. And certainly there should be coverages that are talked about for that dwelling. But in addition to that, there's coverage for other structures that are on the property, a fence, a swimming pool, an outbuilding. There's coverage for personal property that is taken to the home when they move there, or personal property that would be taken with them if they left. And there's differences in homeowners policies, what is considered personal property and part of the dwelling. And those kinds of conversations should be had to make sure that the proper coverage is applied either to the dwelling or personal property. There's additional living expenses coverages in most insurance policies that provide coverage for any type of additional increase in cost of living resulting from a loss. So a fire loss is going to probably put you in a situation where you may have to move out of the home. Those additional living expenses are important to be adequate enough for a family that may need to move to another home for a period of time while the home is repaired.
Yeah, and a time like that when you'd have such a tragic event, I mean, just the whole event itself would be just overwhelming. And then the thought of losing everything and starting over and just the financial impact along with the emotional and all of that, it would be quite stressful for sure. So I know that there is different types of policies, and especially like when it comes to roofs and things like that, there's like actual cash policy, and then we've got like the replacement value. And I know like when there's a hail damaged roof or something like that, people automatically think that they have full replacement, but many times they find out that it's not. So could you kind of share kind of on that topic, the difference and how that works?
Sure, that's a great question. In mid-Missouri, your most likely loss is hail or wind. And it's important to be careful with your insurance agent and make sure that you're prepared for that event. And if you know what your policy says, you're going to have an advantage at that time. So there are two different ways you can cover your home. It can be an actual cash value approach, which includes a deduction for depreciation. So if your home has a roof and you have hail damage and your roof is 20 years old and you have an actual cash value policy, there's going to be a pretty sizable deduction from the replacement of that roof. So you'll have a deductible and a deduction for depreciation. So it can be a lot more out of pocket in that hail event. Whereas if you had a replacement cost policy, it would pay for whatever it costs to replace that roof at today's prices minus your deductible. So that is a option at the purchase time for your policy. There's also in our area a wind and hail deductible that is separate from your normal deductible for all other losses. So be careful in when you're purchasing your policy to make sure that you don't have a wind hail deductible that's going to be too much for you to weather during that time. And that deductible is an important thing that we should talk about, that if you know your deductible, just make sure you have enough to cover that deductible anytime that loss should appear in the future. It can be a surprise and it can be a lot out of pocket at that time, and you might not be ready for it. So making sure you have that ready and available is important.
Is there a better time when you would take a higher deductible versus a lower deductible? I mean, how would one weigh out which is better? Is it pretty much your just financial peace of mind part of it?
It can be changed, and during a active weather time of the year like now and in the spring, we have some folks that choose to raise or lower their deductible during those times and raise the deductible in the winter times to offset some of the cost. That is a maintenance that you have to remember to call your agent and change that. But it's just making sure you have the funds available to cover that deductible is the most important piece.
Interesting. I wasn't aware that you could actually kind of go back and forth. That's very interesting. So another question I kind of wanted to ask you that I think is very prominent in all areas, and I think when you're showing buyers homes, many are surprised how many vacant homes are actually on the market. You know, you might have 10 homes you're showing to someone and maybe half, if not more, is completely vacated. So I think some people don't really think about, I mean, in the midst of moving and you just have so much going on, you don't think about probably the homeowner's coverage side of it, that if your house is vacant and you don't let your insurance agent know, what happens, or what kind of time period does one generally have to report that? Because if you did have a major event like hail or high winds, or, you know, you just never know, fire, anything like that, what would happen in a case like that if I didn't report it?
So all carriers have different policies, and vacant homes are an important part of that. And most of them speak to a definition of vacant or unoccupied. And if someone is not living there, it's unoccupied, and there could be furniture, it could be a staged home that has property in it, but it's still not being occupied. And that could constitute a change in the policy. And an insurance company is interested in rating things properly and making sure if someone's living there, they know what to charge. And if they have no one living there, they know what to charge. So it should be on a different policy form if it's either unoccupied or vacant. So with all carriers, it's going to be important that you call your agent, and if you know there's going to be some sort of change in occupancy, just ask, what do I need to do if I move, or if my aging mother needs to be moved into a nursing home, what should I do with the home that she lives in with all of her things there? There needs to be a serious conversation about that, because as you mentioned, there could be a claim that happens and it may not be covered because that occupancy has changed. So vacant and unoccupied is an active part of our business, and we work tirelessly to try to make sure that people have coverage when a claim occurs.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the thought process behind that is that if you live in the home, the odds of something happening that's major to the home would be pretty contained, because you're going to notice it. And if a house is just sitting there vacant and nobody's checking on it, if there would be a pipe burst or something happen, the extensiveness of what could be is, is just a lot more probable. So it makes sense that they would definitely want to know that. So
Mhm.
is there anything else, Mike, that you can think of that homeowners should ask their insurance agent, or something that maybe people are unaware of that would be good information to know that you see kind of day in and day out?
I I think that one of the best things to ask is how can I maximize the discounts that your company offers? And whether it's bundling other policies, whether it's having certain protection devices like a
Mm-hmm.
burglar system, alarm system, a fire system, sprinklers, fire extinguishers, those types
Mm-hmm.
of things, carriers are interested in giving discounts for those people that are taking care of their property, or providing more opportunities with more policies. So
Mm-hmm.
maximizing discounts is one. I would ask the agents if there are any specific limitations or exclusions in the policy that might
Oh, that's a
affect
good one.
you. And as that agent gets to know the individual, they can understand that if there's a home-based business or something that
Mm-hmm.
is unique to that individual or property, that there may be some exclusions or some things that may not be covered, that the customer should know about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ultimately the customer's responsibility to read the policy, but there are some things that can be brought up front before the choice is made to purchase that policy. And then finally, I suggest that a customer be very upfront with the agent and say, when can we set up an annual review? And I would like to be an active participant in this policy, and I can let you know what's changed in my life, and we can modify the policy as life goes on, and after year things do change, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
risk does change. So
Yeah.
an annual review is something I highly recommend for any buyer to set up with their agent.
That's great advice. Very good advice. So in fact, you probably need to put me down. I need to come in and have an annual review. That's for sure. So, okay. Well, as you can see, Mike is a wealth of information and has shared a lot of topics and information with us this morning. And I do highly recommend him that if you do have an insurance need or questions, Mike Messer at Shelter Insurance is a wealth of information and a great person to visit with. So I thank you very much, Mike, this morning for your time. We
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate it. And at this point in time, I was going to check to see, do we have any questions before we wrap up?
I have a 6-year-old daughter who wants to know if you would insure a pontoon boat.
Of course. So Shelter and all other companies that insure watercraft are very interested in that type of risk, and it's a great policy that covers the boat and your liability while you're on the water. So of course we'd be happy to talk about a pontoon boat.
Okay.
And that was your daughter.
And I was going to say, if I'm looking at that correctly, I think that's my 6-year-old daughter, Olivia, that was asking Dad to ask that
Great question.
So she's a chip off the old block. What can I say? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mike, again. And we appreciate you joining in this morning at our Breakfast with Bev. Hope you guys stay cool. It's going to be another toasty one out there today. And we look very forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week.